Good evening. My name is Stephen Rabinowitz. That is Jake Kaplan and Anthony Strait by me. And I know this might be happening a little while ago, but happened last Monday. But guys, dearly departed. Anthony, say something nice about the retired Angel Hernandez.
Well, to say something nice about Angel Hernandez, I would, but he probably called me down on strikes. So, I don't know if I want to say anything nice about Angel Hernandez, but if I say anything bad about him, I might get called for a ball. So I'll
Uh,
pass on to Jay. What do you think?
All right. I personally, since I don't know the guy and my only interactions with him have been on the other side of a TV screen or up in the stands at a ballpark when he's been calling balls and strikes. And inside of that 3-foot window, I cannot say anything nice about him. He, in my estimation, has one of the worst strike zones in the history of the game. And there are some guys who've had some bad strike zones. We could do a whole segment on that. And honestly, I do think he was one of those guys who graduated from the Joe West, it's all about me school of dealing with confrontations. I don't think MLB was wrong when they said in one of his reviews that they thought he tends to escalate instead of de-escalate those types of situations. But from everything that I have read, all of his fellow umpires believe that in terms of him as a human being, that he's one of the nicest guys and one of the most thoughtful people they've ever been around, always willing to help out, a neighbor, a friend. And even Aaron Boone came out and said in the wake of Hernandez's retirement that overall his experiences with Hernandez were predominantly positive. So, I guess that's kind of where I leave it. There's more to him. Obviously we see him as a two-dimensional guy, just, a guy we yell at because he can't seem to call strikes or balls correctly as far as we're concerned. But in the larger scheme of him as a human being, obviously there's more to that.
I think everybody, by the way, graduated now from the Joe West school of it's all about me lately these days, baseball. Okay, so I'm going to say this. It's something that I just learned recently. In 1997, when Livan Hernandez had that amazing 15 strikeout game against the Braves, I always thought Angel Hernandez was by the plate. He wasn't. It was actually it was part of his crew, but it was Eric Gregg who was behind the plate. And that is
another guy with a lousy strike zone.
Tremendously lousy. But now I used to call that, and I still call it today, the worst umpired game in the history of baseball. So congratulations, Angel Hernandez. I have learned that you did not have the worst strike zone in the history of baseball. And to me, that's an upset. So let's get on with the show. This is on the Sports Lines for June 6th, 2024. It's finals time. I would like to tell you now that there have been 100 combined seasons between all of the local teams, and that's not even counting the Devils, since the title has been won. Just stating a fact. Now on with the show. Anyway, it's time to, like it or not, New York, look at the Oilers and Panthers in the Stanley Cup Finals and the Mavericks and Celtics in the NBA Finals. We'll also talk about the surging New York Yankees in baseball, and even though they've won 3 in a row since I've written this, whatever the hell the opposite of surging is, pick your word for the New York Mets. But first, it's title time. We'll start with the final battle to determine the 2024 Lord of the Chalice of Stanley. That's between the Oilers and the Panthers, and I did not know this until today, the largest distance miles-wise ever between finals opponents.
Interesting.
We'll give one cube to each team because I'm being generous tonight. We'll start with the Panthers, who are the first team in 15 years to get back to the Stanley Cup Finals after losing the previous year to do that. The last team to do that was the 2009 Pittsburgh Penguins. They got the job done beating the Red Wings the year before they lost to the Red Wings. Now, guys, who was the team before that to do
it? Ooh, I read this, but it's now slipping my mind.
But I didn't hear the question.
Wait. Oh, no, I do know. It's Edmonton.
That is right. In
They lost to
1980,
the Islanders, and then
They-
then the next year they won the cup.
they won the cup
Okay.
against the Islanders to really start up that whole dynasty and stuff. So
One started another.
the Oilers reversed the previous year's result of the New York Islanders back in '84. So Anthony, how do the Panthers join those two teams who went from loser to winner and get the job done in 2024?
Well, if you watch the conference finals against the Rangers, if you watch the Florida Panthers, pretty much this whole season, it's been the defense. The four check in, the 5-on-5 has been it's been the stalwart. I mean, when you watch that series against the Rangers, they won the final 3 games by 1 goal. So it wasn't as if they dominated outside of the first game of that series, 3-0 shutout in Madison Square Garden. It was the fact that the 5-on-5, the relentless pressure that they were putting on the Rangers puck handlers, whether it was just in the neutral zone or even in the Rangers own zone, was just relentless. And you saw that the Panthers, a team that goes 4-line deep, which is something the Rangers were not used to doing. They're used to going 3 lines, and just to try to go to a 4th line going into that game 6, and clearly it was an advantage Florida because the Rangers clearly doing something that they have been doing all season. They allow one power play goal the entire series. On top of that, the way they were to play Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider for much of that series is definitely something that I'm quite sure the Edmonton Oilers are have in the back of their mind, since they have their own superstars who Jay will talk about in the next few minutes, in the consideration. But we think about this too with the Florida Panthers, going back to that game 6, the 5-on-5, they dominated everything. They got the not just the shots on goal, the volume of the shots, and the fact that there were quality shots on top of that. I mean, it was just relentless pressure and attacking, and that is something. And you just saw like in the Boston series, they took away David Pastrnak when he was in the game, and then it just wore you down completely, and for them to win this series, they're going to have to continue that, because that's been the key thing all season long. The 4 check-ins, the physical game, they're going to, and to be able to do the same. You got guys like Barkov, and obviously, and I don't want to say his name right about this, he's one of your key guys, but that defensive pairing is going to have to be key when you think about Drasnall and Connor McDavid, as far as trying to slow down that Edmonton offense who can score goals the hurdles we saw in the Western Conference Final against Dallas when they were behind a couple of times. That still is how the game changed dramatically. So for the Florida Panthers, it's going to be what they've been doing all along, and that's just been physicality, pressure, maintaining that 4 check-in, and also this is a deeper team going into the final than what a year ago. They were banged up and pretty much right for the picket for the Golden Knights. This time around, they have a more depth. They're relatively healthy, and they have everything going for them. Not to mention the finals experience from a year ago. Definitely playing into it. So that's what the Florida Panthers going to have to do. It's going to have to be the physicality and the defense, and play from there, because when you watch that series against the Rangers, their pressure led to a lot of odd man rushes that created a lot of scoring opportunities, particularly game 5 in the go-ahead goal in the third period was generated off of a turnover in the neutral zone, and it led to a breakaway. So that's what the Florida Panthers going to have to do in this series.
It's like that's a team that almost gives you no room to work with. And almost every game in that series, Florida was out shooting the Rangers by 10 shots on goal or more. And it even was after the first period, they would clamp down in the second and third. Florida has probably a lot more to their game than they did last year, because we've seen a lot of teams make a run as a kind of Cinderella. Even though they were the President's Trophy winners the year ago, they were an 8 seed last year, and they kept that momentum going this year, and now they are one of the more well-oiled machines right now in all of hockey, and they are by far the favorites in this series. So, Jay, the Oilers are back in this position for the first time in 18 years. They, like the Panthers, have made every postseason post-pandemic, and they, like the Panthers last year, have overcome some pretty big flameouts to get into this position to skate for the cup. Then also this year, firing their head coach early in the season. Jay, the Oilers will raise Lord Stanley's chalice
if the special teams can continue to be special. I mean, and when you're as good on both the power play and the penalty kill as the Oilers have been pretty much throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs, special teams is easily the what to watch for. And when those units are led by a guy nicknamed McJesus, that player is easily the who to watch for. And I'll have more on him in particular in a minute. So for all you casual hockey fans who only tune in for the final leg of the chase for Lord Stanley's chalice, get ready to watch Edmonton's Connor McDavid, the best player in the NHL, display his skills on hockey's grandest stage, especially when the Oilers have the man advantage, where they've generated 17 goals per 60 minutes with McDavid on the ice. The ranking/rating numbers for Edmonton special teams are ridiculous. They are number 1 in power play goals, 19. Interestingly enough, the Panthers are number 2 with 14. The Oilers are second in power play opportunities with 51. Again, interestingly enough, Florida's number 1 with 60. The Oilers are number 1 in power play conversion rate, an astounding 37.3%. On the penalty kill, they are number 2, tied for fewest power play goals allowed, 3. They are third in the number of times they've been on the penalty kill, 49. Florida's actually been higher. They're number 2 with 51. But the Oilers are number 1 in penalty kill conversion rate. They have killed 93.9% of their penalties. That's what's 3 goals allowed in 49 opportunities. Florida is actually the second best penalty killing team in the Stanley Cup playoffs at 88.2%. On the individual level, the Oilers have the top three players in the top 10 in power play goals. Leon Draisaitl, 6. Zach Hyman, 5. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 4. And they have the top 3 overall in power play assists. McDavid with 12, Evan Bouchard with 11, and Draisaitl with 8. Edmonton's power play, when it is firing on all cylinders, is nothing like the NHL has ever seen. The Los Angeles Kings know that more than any of Edmonton's playoff opponents after the Oilers victimized them to the tune of 9 power play goals and 18 chances with the man advantage in round 1. Oiler power play had a bit of a slump, a 1-for-17 skid that started with their second round series against Vancouver and continued with an over 6 start through the first 4 games against Dallas in the Western Conference Finals. But after going 2 for 3 in Game 5, followed by scoring on both of their chances in the Game 6 series clincher, including one of the most awesome displays of stick handling and shot making in close by McDavid that I've ever seen, they finished the Western Conference Finals at 4 for 11 on the power play, rebounding from that 0 for 6 start with a 4 for 5 finish. On the flip side, Edmonton was a perfect 14 of 14 on the penalty kill against Dallas, including 3 for 3 in Game 6. Add that to the shorthanded goal they scored in Game 4, and you can state with authority that the man advantage was no such thing for the Stars. Oilers have killed off 28 consecutive penalties over their last 10 games since giving up 2 power play goals in Game 3 of their second round series against Vancouver. I know we talked for 2 whole series about how good the Rangers special teams were, but what the Oilers are doing on both the power play and the penalty kill is absolutely ridiculous. They'll be going against a Florida Panthers team that is no slouch on special teams, especially the penalty kill, which has been a strength for them all season. That 88% efficiency with which they've killed penalties so far in the playoffs is due to solid play in front of the crease, limiting their opponents' opportunities to create shots and scoring chances, and forcing their opponents to spend time defending against shorthanded looks by the Panthers' penalty kill unit. Oh, yeah, and they have Sergei Bobrovsky in goal, who's been good Bob pretty much the entire postseason. Has a .905 save percentage when his team is on the penalty kill. He's allowed just 6 goals on 63 shots. That's third among goaltenders who have played at least 6 games in the playoffs. Ironically enough, Edmonton Stuart Skinner has the best save percentage when his team is on the penalty kill. He's only allowed 3 goals on 49 shots for a .939 save percentage. Now, as I said at the top, special teams will be key for the Oilers, and as I said, that starts with Connor McDavid. In the regular season, he was third in the NHL in scoring with 132 points. His 32 goals, which would be a great season for anyone, were actually a 50% drop-off from the 64 he had the year before. set a career high with 100 assists, which led the NHL. He's the leading scorer overall in the playoffs with 31 points in 18 games and has 56% of the expected goals, outscored opponents 21-12. 14 of those points are on the power play. Of his playoff leading 12 power play assists, 8 of the primary also tops. In the Western Conference Finals alone, 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points in the 6 games. The guy skates and handles the puck like no one I've ever seen, and he always seems to be 2 plays ahead. The Game 6 power play goal that I referenced earlier, here's how Daniel Nugent-Bowman, the Oilers beat writer for The Athletic, described it. Quote, the Oilers captain scored the most electrifying goal of the 2024 playoffs, and it's the prettiest one of his postseason career, just 4 minutes, 17 seconds into the game. With the Oilers on a power play, McDavid took a cross-ice pass from Leon Draisaitl and deftly sidestepping Sam Steele. From there, it was showtime. He caught Miro Heiskanen, a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman, leaning and toe-dragged around him like he was a beer leaguer. Then he chipped a backhander over Ottinger for a few extra style points. As descriptive as that is, you still need to see it to believe it. I saw it live, and I still had to go to Twitter and YouTube the next day to see it again, just to confirm that I actually saw what I thought I saw. McDavid's put on a clinic this postseason, and he's done it against some of the NHL's best shutdown defensive players and top-tier defensive teams. In the first round against the Kings, he faced off against Anze Kopitar and Philip Deneau, 2 centers who will likely get Selke votes, plus Drew Doughty, who's a future Hall of Famer and still one of the better defensive blue liners in the NHL. In the second round against the Canucks, he went against JT Miller in a hell of a defensive scheme put up by Rick Tocchet, a Jack Adams award-winning coach. Remember that 1 of 17 slump on the power play? Started in Vancouver. Finally, Western Conference Finals, McDavid got a healthy dose of the Stars' 2 best defensive defensemen, Chris Tainey and the previously mentioned Miro Heiskanen. But by the time it was all said and done, in just his 5-on-5 minutes alone against those 2, he put up 6 points, and the Oilers outscored the Stars 7-4 with him on the ice against them. Oilers come into the Stanley Cup Finals with the second best power play in playoff history and the best penalty kill in playoff history, dominating special teams play at the same time. This is something that's never happened before. Can McDavid and the Oilers keep it up against one of the NHL's best defensive teams, led by arguably the NHL's best defensive forward in Panthers captain Sasha Barkov? Tune in and find out. I sure will.
Jay, I would say this. To describe that goal, and I watched it live too, it would be like somebody plugged in a PlayStation 5 controller and decided to go completely ape shit with the right analog stick, because that was an NHL 24 kind of goal if I ever saw one in real life. That was unbelievable.
Absolutely. And they needed every little bit of it because they got 8 shots the entire game, and 2 of those shots are on the power play. And that's how they did it. So let me talk a little bit more about what Jay just said, because it's really, really interesting to see this. So one of the reasons that they fired Coach Jay Woodcroft early in the season was because of the fact that was actually a struggling penalty kill. It was only a 70% success rate. Then they ended up with a 79.5% rate at the end of the season, which ended up being about league average, middle of the pack 15. They actually had, when Chris Knobloch was hired back in November, they actually had assistant coach Mark Stewart take care of the penalty kill with a worry that it turned out to be pretty good, as we've seen the historic nature of this team. However, Jay, I'm going to throw some cold water on here with a stat that I just found, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Last year, so in the modern analytics era of hockey, that is 2007 until now, there have been 16 different Stanley Cup champions. Every single one of them has outscored their opposition by at least 5 goals at 5-on-5. Last year, the Las Vegas Golden Knights outscored their opponents at 5-on-5 at a 2-to-1 clip, 66-33.
Wow.
So there's going to be a little bit, because Edmonton this year on 5-on-5 in the playoffs is 0 in their plus minus. 41 up, 41 down. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all that happens when we get into the series, which will start on Saturday. Okay, let's talk about X factors for each team really quickly. Gustav Forsling is a guy who was undrafted, picked up from the waiver wire for the Panthers, and there's a reason why he got signed to an 8-year deal, because he has become one of the best defensemen in the league. You see his slap shot in this playoffs. It's about as hard as any defenseman that you can see out there today. Best defensive player in the playoffs, bar none. one of the reasons, possibly the main reason, why the Rangers were just getting suffocated in every single which way. In these playoffs, when they're on the 5-on-5 and he's on the ice, he doesn't usually play the power play at all. And I'll get back to that point in just a second. They are plus 119, the Panthers are in shooting, plus 119 in shots 5-on-5. Remember, I said he doesn't play a lot in the power play. He's fourth in scoring these playoffs among defensemen, which is rare, especially since, again, he's playing pretty much 5-on-5 the whole entire time. He had the game-winning goal in Game 6 versus the Bruins and tying goals in Games 3 and 5 versus the Rangers. Only scored 39 points during the regular season, and it only so many games in the postseason. He has 11 points. Look what he did in these playoffs to some of the league's best. Round 1, Nikita Kucherov, Tampa Bay, no goals, nothing. Round 2, David Pastrnak, Boston, no goals on even strength. And then, of course, round 3, Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, no goals on even strength for either of them. This is a guy who is really a guy who is just a lockdown defenseman. Anthony, you said it perfectly. That's the key to Florida's team out there. It's kind of like what the Devils did back in the day. They will suffocate you. They will suffocate you. Except, unlike the Devils, they have the offense that actually can match any of these teams out there, and it's still one of the best in the league. They have so many killers, and they have more killers than they did last year. Now, for the Oilers, you don't usually talk about the goalie as an X factor, but when your team is full of offensive star after offensive star after offensive star after offensive star, and the team before you has beaten pretty much Vezina Trophy competition, Vezina award-winning competition throughout, going Alger Vasilevsky round 1, Jeremy Swayman round 2, Igor Shesterkin round 3. You wouldn't think Stuart Skinner would possibly have to be the last thing to climb over the mountain for, but there we are. He was actually benched in Game 4 of the series versus Vancouver in the conference semifinals for Calvin Pickard. He came back Game 6 of that series. Oilers came back to win that series 4-3. Since that benching, 6-2, 1.81 goals against average, a 920 save percentage and 922 save percentage against save percentage in the conference finals. Outplayed Jake Ottinger, who Jay had talked about last time needed to stand on his head to help win the series. Again, get outshot 35-7, and you're the one who wins when you have the 35 shots. You stood on your head, and I don't think anybody would have expected that, considering we've used Stuart Skinner as more of a liability than anything else in this postseason, but he turned it on in Games 5 and 6. He's worked a lot with new coach Chris Knobloch and one of the greatest defensemen of all time, Paul Coffey. And, of course, he just gets peppered a lot less. I think we've talked about it. It's pretty simple. You get less shots towards you, and you get a little less of a pace going, and that's going to help you out. He in the postseason, he's only given up 8 goals when going over the right shoulder pad. He had 26 of those in the regular season, and honestly, you're playing at about the same rate now. And so on any goals these playoffs, he is there's been 40 chances of shots coming off the rebound. It's only let up 2 goals off of the rebound. And he usually on average, you let up about 12 per season, let up 11 during the season. So, but one thing that just astounds me, and it's very rare. This is almost, dare I say it, let's just pat on the back. We're going to say this is Shesterkin-like. He's won 2 games this postseason when his team got outshot by 20. And that's the mark of a goalie that is learning. And again, even though the Panthers haven't faced a guy like Stuart Skinner in terms of just different types of goalies, this could be a little more of a challenge, just because I don't know if the Florida Panthers are going to know what hit them. Now, I could be wrong, and he could be pulled after Game 2 or 3. That's why it's an X factor and not a key to victory. But who knows? He's going to be, I think, the main reason why this is either a short series or a long one. All right, let's move on. Over in the NBA, the stories are as long as the finals, as the wait for Game 1 was due to both teams finishing off the conference finals in just one game over the combined minimum games needed. Thanks, NBA. You need to schedule better. You have a star looking to redeem himself from his poor finals 2 years ago. You have a star who's always been a number 2 looking to truly be a 1A. You have a foreign star who's looking to just become the best player in the world. Just saw another person do it just last year. Might as well be his turn. And you have a reformed star looking to close one of the last chapters of his career with a non-LeBron ring. And then LeBron just had to be LeBron and talk about him all week, and Kyrie Irving, obviously. And that's just the team's dynamic duos. So for now, just leave the rest of the unimportant guys to me. And guys, you're going to take the dynamic duos to start these first 2 segments. Jay, since there are Jays on the other side,
that would kind of mean Anthony should go first, doesn't it?
That could be that Anthony should go first. By the way, Celtics are up in this series 1-0. They won game 1 tonight, 107-89. So Anthony, let's talk about the Mavericks. And Anthony,
no, he's got the Celtics. I've got the Mavericks. Remember?
Fuck, this is what happens when I write this down. Anthony, what's the expectation for the Jays? That's why I got confused going into the finals.
Yeah, by default, we kind of decided I got the Eastern Conference winner and Jim get the West.
Whatever, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, obviously for the 2 Jays, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. For Jaylen Brown, and this is kind of what you would call a "I told you so" postseason for him. The MVP of the Eastern Conference Finals, averaging 29.8 points per game, 51% shooter. The clutch game tying 3-pointer in game 1 against Indiana. We still won in overtime and moved to that 4-game sweep. He's played in coming into tonight all 14 postseason games thus far, averaging 24, 6, and 2 assists a game. 62% from inside the arc, 35% from behind the arc. But when you look at this postseason, his scoring average has actually has increased. Has the postseason won on the first round, he averaged 22, second round 23, and across the conference finals 29 points a game. He's been clutch too. 40 in game 2. In game 2 of the conference finals. Obviously, was the game time 3-pointer in game 1. Took it to another level in game 4 to close out that series. Scored 19 of his game high 29 points in the second half of that game 4 victory. And tonight, and obviously I'll get to tonight in a second. Jason Tatum is another one, and he's averaging 26 for the postseason. 4-time All NBA selection for the NBA selection for the 4th time. He's looking about it's a redemption series for him. And we remember 2 years ago in the finals, he did not play well. Shot just 36% from the field, just a little above 21 points per game. So this has been for Tatum. This is a tale of redemption. And for tonight, Jaylen Brown 22 points, very efficient game, 7 of 12 from the field. Jason Tatum. In this game, what I've noticed in the conference finals too is he's been more the facilitator, and which is something to be noted because both of these guys are at their best when they are attacking, and you wonder if for this combination to work at some point, if one would take a step back to allow the other to kind of take over and drive, and obviously on the other side, when you see which Jay will point out with that dynamic duel. You've seen a lot of that this season, but in this case of Jason Tatum, he's been more of the secondary guy in the last 2 rounds. Conference finals and of course game 1. Just shot 6 of 16 from the field, 16 points, but a plus 19 when he was on the court, and that's something that the Celtics are definitely taking a heartbeat. But it's a good start to the series. I think obviously this game. Had a few scares, but it turned into a rout at the end of the day. So it's pretty much an all-around game. They didn't need a big game from either Brown or Tatum. to say the least. But they're going to need both guys to step it up. They're going to need Tatum to shake off what happened 2 years ago to really to be at his best. If it's Jaylen Brown, you know, he got stuck. He was snubbed for all NBA slide a couple weeks ago, and he responded by being a conference finals MVP. And it's fair to say that maybe he has to be the main go-to guy in this series for the Celtics to finally place number 18 into the Raptors at the TD Garden.
What's really funny about this team right now, what's funny about Jaylen Brown's postseason is the efficiency of what he's shooting at. He has now played 15 games this postseason. He had his lowest shooting percentage, and again, you're going to obviously be a high volume shooter when you're the number 2 star on the team, is 38.9%. That is his lowest field goal percentage. Every other game he has shot 40%. He's at 40% 2 times, and every other game he shot over 50%. This is a guy who has been very careful with his selection and has really, really been able to do whatever is needed to be done offensively on the court. And he doesn't need to do as much because he's got a much better supporting cast than what's on the other side. And that's not even a debate. That's almost pretty much a stone cold fact you would have to say. So, as I said before, fully operational Death Star right now, that team is. And they're up 1-0 for a reason. I wish I had known that I screwed up the lines because, Jay, this is perfectly for you. Jay, can 2 divorced men live with each other without driving each other crazy? That's what we're talking about with the odd couple of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. What are the expectations, even though they are down 0-1?
Hold on a second. I got to get some clarification here. I understand who Irving is divorced from. Who's Luka divorced from?
Luka's just divorced from life, pretty much.
Gotcha.
So
he just proposed to his girlfriend. I don't know.
It's an odd couple joke.
They
for
are
God's
definitively
sake.
the odd couple of this. Yes, I know where you were going.
I know. You don't have to go in depth with my joke. You just have to
okay.
I appreciate
that. Jay, I'll clean it up. Lucas the Felix Unger in this pairing.
You definitely would be the Felix Unger in this pairing, 100%.
That's hilarious. Yeah. So obviously, you know, with Anthony handling the Jays as the dynamic duo in Boston, I get the most unlikely of the two, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. You know, and as it was during the regular season, so it's been during the playoffs, not going to change with the Larry O'Brien trophy at stake. The Dallas Mavericks will go as far as their dynamic duo backcourt, who are averaging a combined 51.6 points per game, 14 assists and 13.5 rebounds coming into the finals, can take them. Through the first 3 rounds, so far so good, with the exception of game 1 against Minnesota when Kyrie got hot at the start. They stuck to this 1-2 punch script of Luka starting things off and Kyrie finishing them off. Didn't quite play out that way tonight. I'll get to that in a minute. Both had 36 in the Western Conference Finals clincher, and they gave a master class on that script. Luka dominated the first quarter, 10 points in the first 3 minutes, 15 in the first 8, 20 by the time it was all said and done. He outscored the Mavericks, the Timberwolves rather. They had just 19. Had 25 of his 36 in the first half. Kyrie had 32 of his 36 in the second and third quarter to put Minnesota away, as the fourth quarter was what the legendary Marv Albert would call extended garbage time. Doncic's 36.10 rebound 5 assist performance to close out that series was the showcase as to why he won the Magic Johnson Trophy as the Western Conference Finals MVP. These two guys came into the finals having on a epic postseason roll. Check out a couple of these numbers for them. Doncic came into the finals averaging 28.8 points per game, 9.6 boards, 8.8 dimes, 6 triple doubles, 51.3 effective field goal percentage through the first 3 rounds. If he can keep those numbers going into the finals, he'd be just the 3rd different player to average at least 28, 8, and 8 in 15 playoff games. The other two, a couple of guys you might have heard of, LeBron in 2015 and 2018, and Nikola Jokic last year. And regarding those assist numbers, he leads the playoffs in assists on threes, 50, and dunks, 49. The most surprising thing is that Doncic has done all this despite not being 100%. He's been dealing with a sprained right knee since midway through round one. That would at least partly explain why, as dominant as he's been, his points per game, assists, and effective field goal percentage are actually down from his regular season marks of 33.9, 9.8, and 57.3%. Kyrie, and this is crazy. I couldn't believe I was reading this. The Mavericks have actually been 27.6 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor, plus 8.2, than they've been with him off the floor, minus 19.4. That is the biggest on-off differential among 52 players who've played at least 250 minutes in the playoffs. Irving's 48.5% field goal percentage through 3 rounds is the best of his playoff career, and his 42.1 from downtown is his best since leaving Cleveland. Now, both players have to continue to be the twin engine that makes the Mavericks go. The question is how the NBA's best offensive backcourt, arguably, attacks the Boston Celtics team with arguably the NBA's best defensive backcourt. Celtics guards Derek White and Drew Holiday, both NBA All-Defensive Team members. And if that wasn't tough enough, Boston also has one of the Jays, forward Jaylen Brown, who was the primary Doncic defender in the regular season matchups. The 2 most likely ways that Doncic and Irving will attack the Celtics will be 1, their pick and roll actions and how often those actions lead to corner threes, something that I touched on in our Western Conference preview, and 2, their ISO actions. So let's start with the pick and roll. In the Western Conference Finals, Dallas, 1.14 points per possession on the PNR. Doncic and Irving were pretty much able to do whatever they wanted, scored at the rim, mid-range, step backs, all type of threes all series long. They found Gafford and Lively for lobs, hit Washington and Jones Jr. on kickouts for those corner threes, which have accounted for 34% of the Mavs' total three-point attempts, second highest rate among playoff teams. Mavs lead the playoffs in corner threes attempted per game, 11.6, made per game, 4.6, 39.4% shooting on corner threes, number 3 on playoff teams. Washington leads all players with 28, Jones Jr. second with 17 corner threes. Both have been major recipients of the looks generated out of the Mavs pick and roll. Washington, 41.2 on those corner threes. Jones, 45.9. Their ability to hit threes from the corners has made opponents pay when they've tried to send help on Doncic and Irving. The other thing to watch is how often Doncic and Irving try to put the Celtics bigs, Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis, fresh off that strained right calf injury, in screening actions on those pick and roll actions. And if that causes the Celtics defense that is number 1 in the playoffs against the corner 3, holding opponents to a measly 23.5% to change how they do that. They rarely blitz or double on pick and roll actions, preferring to play 2-on-2 with the ball handler and the screener, other 3 players staying at home on the shooters. Let's talk ISOs. Per Synergy Sports, Mavericks, 1.05 points per possession on isolation plays, second best in the association in the regular season. Doncic, 555 points on ISOs, most for any player, last 4 years per Synergy. Doncic and Irving were top 15 in ISO possessions and points from ISOs. Doncic number 1 in both categories. Among players at least 200 ISO possessions, Doncic was 6th, Irving 7th in points per ISO possessions, 1.09, 1.08. So far in the playoffs, both are top 20 in points per ISO possession, so their numbers are closer to 1 than 110. Can they continue to be highly effective on ISOs against a Celtic team that allows only 0.80 points per ISO possessions? Mavs are chasing history, looking to become the first number 5 seed in the NBA history to win a title. 6 previous teams seeded 5th or lower to make the finals all ran up against the top seed from the other conference. All 6 failed to get past them. If the Mavericks are to break that streak, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving will have to be even more of an epic dynamic duo than they've already been. Tonight, these guys did everything the opposite of what I just talked about. Luka, 38 minutes. He was 12 of 26 from the floor, 4 of 12 from 3, 2 of 5 from the line. Yeah, he had 30 points, but it was an empty calorie type 30 points. He had 10 rebounds, all on the defensive end. 1 assist. This is a guy who was averaging almost 9 assists a game in the playoffs. Yeah, against 4 turnovers, he was minus 10 for the night. Kyrie, 36 minutes, 6 of 19 from the floor. So much for that career high field goal percentage, right? 0 of 5 from 3. No trips to the line at all. He finished with just 12 points, 3 boards, 2 assists against 3 turnovers. He was minus 19 for the night. Remember I talked about all those corner threes. as a team, Dallas was just 7 of 27 on threes for the game. And obviously, as you can see, a lot of that, almost half of it, was Doncic. Corner threes for the night. They had only 3 attempts. As a team averaging almost 12, made just 1. Washington and Jones were 1 of 5 overall from 3, 0 for 1 on the corners. Big reason why they lost 107 to 89. Honestly, guys, there were points in this game where in the second period early part of the third, where it looked like Dallas was going to get back into this game, where you were seeing Luka and Kyrie get into some ISO actions where no help came from the Boston's extra defenders, no doubling, no nothing. They had some nice finishes to the rim, some step back threes. They even hunted KP right when he came into the game, like I said they would. Big crazy shot made by Luka in one of the early possessions. Other than that, KP had a dominant game. They could not do anything against him. Nobody was able to do anything from beyond the arc. Luka and Kyrie were forced by Boston's coverages to play hero ball. They basically didn't allow anybody else to do anything else. It's kind of disgusting. And here's what it comes down to. This is the stat that blew me away. Mavs only managed 9 assists on 35 field goals. And here's how bad it was. 5 of their first 26, which means 4 of those 9 assists came on the last 9 field goals, which were in garbage time. Everything that they needed to do that I said in the scout, they did not do for 48 minutes or even close to it. Fits and starts, but for the most part, Boston's defensive scheme did not allow the Mavs to do anything that they are really good at. And that's why they're trailing 0-1.
Just a lot of just missed opportunities tonight. I think once the haymaker came at the beginning of the first quarter, by the way, they had the largest first quarter deficit in NBA Finals history of plus 17, minus 17 in the first quarter. And I do think the Brewers got a little bit to Kyrie Irving tonight because he just was really off his game. As much as he says it's in the past, it's in the past. The Boston crowd does not forget, does not forgive, and this team got eaten alive tonight. Speaking of that big reason why the Dallas Mavericks won, yes, Kristaps. First of all, let me just say, Kristaps Porzingis, who came back tonight, he's by Mavericks X Factor. He missed the last 10 games. He said, "I'm going to play, but I'm unsure I'm 100%." By the way, he was 20.1 points per game, 7.2 rebounds, 51.6% from the field, 37.5% from 3. Was averaging 14 points, 5.7 rebounds a game in the Miami series before the injury. Also got 2 blocks a game. And they were 21-4 without them this season, Boston. Bullshit! He's not 100%. Bullshit! I do have to say, he came off of the bench.
he looked 100% tonight.
He looked 100%, and putting him on the bench immediately makes the better bench Boston just because of the fact of what he did. Only played 21 minutes because, again, as Jay said, there was a bunch of times, especially at the beginning of the second half, where they just started hunting him defensively. That was the right call because there was one point when Luka basically put him on an island and putting his former teammate on an island for an easy 3. But what did Porzingis not do in this game, especially in the first half, scoring pretty much all of his points in the first half? He had 20 points, 18 of those in the first half, a ridiculously efficient 8 for 13, 6 rebounds, and most importantly, 3 block shots all in that first. Actually, I think he got credited with 2 in the first quarter, but they just kept going to him, and he just kept blocking him because it was kind of easy for him to do so. This was a clinic in terms of what Porzingis could do in adding the final dimension to a Boston team. As we've said before, Dallas needs everything to go right, plus they need Luka or Kyrie to be the best player on the court, and that would get Dallas a possible series victory. Boston just has 4 or 5 guys who could take over a game on that court at any time. Tonight it was Porzingis, and in the position that Porzingis is in, with Horford being the backup, here's what you ended up getting out of that tonight. 12 for 21, plus 20 combined, 30 points, 13 rebounds, 5 blocks. Al Horford does a pretty damn good job of being a starting center himself, by the way. Now, if you have Al Porzingis as your 5 during the postseason, I think you're going to win a championship. I think the Boston Celtics did everything they possibly could tonight and used their biggest secret weapon, who wasn't 100%. Again, bullshit, he wasn't 100%. Maybe defensively he wasn't 100%, but still. And blew this game open. And this keeps up Kristaps Porzingis, who, by the way, until tonight, had never played a game outside of the first round of the NBA playoffs.
That's right.
This was his first game outside of the first round, and it was a finals game, and he looked like Bill Russell out there in the first quarter. Go figure, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, on the other side, let's talk about Daniel Gafford really quick, since I did talk about his running mate on the last show in Derek Lively. Gafford had a very small night, only played 14 minutes and a -10 on there, and only went 3 for 3 from the field. If you combine Gafford and Lively, by the way, 4 for 4. They don't really miss a lot. 2 for 4 from the line. 8 rebounds, and a combined -25 on the court. But Gafford is still going to be a very huge part of this series. He was former teammates last year with Kristaps Porzingis. This postseason, 9.2 rebounds a game, 9.2 points, 5.9 rebounds, 1.8 assists, shoots 64% from the floor. And because of grabbing Gafford, this is one of the reasons why the Mavericks are a much better defensive team. They only had him for a very short period of time because the trade deadline really isn't midseason. It's more close to like the 50, 55 point game mark of the season. They moved up 4 spots in the league in rebounding and points in the paint just because of the addition of Daniel Gafford. By the way, there was a rumor out there, this has nothing to do with anything, that he was going to try to be naturalized and play for Slovenia in the upcoming Olympic Games for basketball. Kind of walked that back a little bit. They're not going to do that now, but we'll see how Daniel Gafford does in the rest of this series. The Mavericks were a much better team with him in the lineup, and they're going to have to in order to win this series. All you need is to win one to get this back tied at a 1-1 series going into Dallas. We'll see what happens on Sunday night.
I would say this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say this about Dallas. The first quarter of Sunday night is going to be very important because you can't get hit with another haymaker with this Boston team, and now down 1-0 in the series. Dallas is going to have to do a better job of being able to come out to a better start and try to get more quality shots. They were a little sloppy in the first quarter. I think some of it had to do with the long layoff. Plus, Boston did not look like a team that had a 9-day layover from the last game. They came out very sharp. It's 2 days. Drew Holiday a +20 tonight in this game as well. So right now it's still it's one game. If you're Dallas, you throw it out the window and just try to start fresh for game 2. If you're the Celtics, you take what you did correctly, particularly on defense, and try to carry it over in the game 2. And Porzingis it's definitely an X factor in the series because not just his offensive production, but the fact that he is a huge rim protector around the basket, and you have a guy that Luka and Kyrie would like to get to the basket, that could be a big deterrent. So let's see what Jason Kidd can do for game 2 as far as trying to get this series even.
A lot of adjustments are going to be made for this team. Mavericks have a lot of work to do on Sunday night, so we'll see what happens. All right, on to the diamond.
Look, I'll tell you this, Rabbi, and then I'll let you transition us. There's an old saying, and it's never more true in the playoffs. Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. The Mavericks got hit in the mouth today, and they got up for maybe about half a second, and then Boston gave them the second haymaker and put them right back down. The question will be, can they actually not only get up, but remain upright in game 2 and walk away with this and come away with a split?
What's going to be very interesting to me is seeing how this team, if this game can get to the fourth quarter. We saw Boston close a lot of those games against Indiana, and we know Dallas has really lived off of closing off of close games this postseason because they have, as David Gundy said on many broadcasts, two Mariano Rivera's on the court in now the uninterrupted transition already in progress. On to the diamond, whether it be surprisingly good or surprisingly acceptable starting pitching, effort in a surprisingly deep lineup, or the MVP seasons of so far of both Juan Soto, who unfortunately did leave tonight's game against the Twins with some sore forearm tightness. We'll see how that develops over the next few days. And, Aaron Judge, we'll get into that in a second, Jay. The New York Yankees, going into a big series this weekend with the Los Angeles Dodgers, are currently the best team in baseball, second best team in baseball, but they played the Twins. What do I expect? Of course, they're going to win that game. That game just finished, by the way. So they're right now 45-19, 4.5 games ahead of the Baltimore Orioles in the AL East. And the other team, it would be more. They are very pesky. Let's talk pleasant surprise, crushing disappointment, and reason for hope for the Bronx Bombers. And this, I did not expect this. I don't know if anybody expected this. But Jay, the surprise is of the Yankees.
I mean, it's the improvement of Anthony Volpe. For me, in a season that's had plenty of pleasant surprises, how about this pitching staff, especially the starting rotation, crushing things without Garrett Cole, who in his own words is all this close to being back.
Two rehab starts apparently left to go, at least for right now, it seems.
Yep. Because he has to do that. He had 2 at AA. He'll have 2 at AAA before they bring him back. The one that has stood out was the one I was hoping for, and that's the maturation and improvement of Anthony Volpe. Now, the Jersey kid had a somewhat decent rookie year overall last year, putting up a 2020 season and winning a Gold Glove, but there were some obvious holes in his game that we all knew needed to be fixed, especially with the bat, as he hit just 209, 283, 383 slash right there. If the Yankee shortstop was going to make the leap from potential to production. Volpe had some major struggles with the bat last season, which I made no bones about calling out. Among hitters with at least 500 plate appearances, Volpe's 84 weighted runs created plus was 9th lowest in Major League Baseball. For some context, for those of you who are not big next-gen stat guys, a weighted runs created plus of 100 is Major League average. So Volpe was 16% worse than the average Major League hitter. He finished in the 19th percentile in strikeout rate, 33rd percentile in whiff rate. Yes, that is an actual MLB advanced stat. Opposing pitchers attacked him in the top of the strike zone and were successful, striking Volpe out on 31.5% of his at-bats that ended with a pitch either in the upper third of the strike zone or just outside the upper third in the chase zone. Volpe was among the group of Yankees, along with Aaron Judge, Anthony Rizzo, DJ LeMahieu, and Gleyber Torres, who came to the Yankees player development complex on January 2. And he spent his offseason in those 6 weeks before spring training started, refining his bat path to enhance his ability to make contact against certain pitch types and locations more consistently. He now has a flatter path through the zone instead of the steep swing he had last season. The goal behind the change to a flatter path through the zone was not to eliminate his power, but to improve his ability to cover more types of pitches at different speeds and locations, and thus increase his contact, which should lead to him becoming a more well-rounded hitter. So far, so good through the first 2 months plus. Obviously, batting leadoff, which he's done basically since the middle of April in front of Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, has helped with his improved production, as opposing pitchers have to go at Volpe or they run the risk of having a player with his speed on the bases and potentially in scoring position, as he is a threat to steal. He's 11 of 14. With 2 of the best RBI guys in the game coming up behind him. Volpe's ability to put pressure on the pitcher right out of the gate is a big reason why the Yankees lead the AL in most runs scored in the first inning, 47 through games of June 5. Now, Volpe's downplayed it, saying, quote, "I think it would benefit anyone in that position," meaning hitting in front of Judge and Soto. They're the 2 best hitters in the world. Pitchers are definitely going to be thinking about them when I'm up, when DJ is up, probably when every single other hitter in the lineup is up. We just want to take advantage of it and get on base. Now, Judge said that what Volpe has done out of the leadoff spot has been, quote, "incredible this season." The numbers basically through May and into this first week of June, basic and advanced, speak for themselves. Check them out. As a leadoff hitter overall, slash line, 274, 338, 420. That's a 757 OPS. His batting average on balls put in play, 338. when he's leading off any inning, 273, 319, 421 slash line, right around his overall numbers as a leadoff hitter. 741 OPS, batting average on balls in play, 365. But when I talk, here's the thing that like correlates to that whole them being so good, scoring runs in the first inning. As the first batter of a game for the Yankees, 313, 353, 479 slash line. That's an 832 OPS. His batting average on balls put in play when he's leading off the game for the Yankees, 424. Now, here's the proof of the change, with his change in approach to hitting. His home run rate is down from 2023, 2.1 from 3.5 last year. But so is his strikeout rate, which is something I called out often last season. It's down to 20.6%. Last year, it was 27.8. His walk rate is about the same, 8.2 to 8.6 year over year. His strikeouts per walks, 3.1 down to 2.52. His at-bats per strikeout is also improved. From 3.2 last year, it's up to 4.3. His fly ball rate has dropped from 27.6 to 20.8. His ground ball rate has gone up from 40.1 to 49.2, which has led to Volpe having the second most infield hits in Major League Baseball. His pull percentage has dropped, 31.6 last season, just 17.8 so far this season. His percentage of balls hit to center field and the opposite way have both gone up. Center, 58.4 from 52.5. Opposite field, 23.9 from 15.9. And his percentage of all plate appearances where the ball has been put in play is up from 59% last year to 67% so far this year. That means 2/3 of all his plate appearances, he is putting the ball in play. Now, Volpe's impact has been obvious, highlighted by his 21-game hitting streak earlier in the month, which was in May, which was the longest Yankee hitting streak since Robinson Cano had a 23 straight game streak in 2012. By Fangraphs WAR, through the end of May, Volpe, 2.7, top 10 so far, top 10 players so far. His 127 weighted runs created plus mark is top 10 among shortstops, and defensively, his 7 outs above average ranks second. He's been a big reason for the team's success so far this season, both on the plate and in the field, where his defensive metrics and the eye test now match. People were saying last year, not so much. And his improvement in both areas, but especially in the batter's box, has been a pleasant surprise and one that all of us were hoping for. Granted, a little over 2 months is a small sample size, but I'm cautiously optimistic that it'll be a season-long improvement. Rabbi, let me have my time at the end for my little Aaron Judge rant, if you would, please.
I was going to give it to you anyway. Thank you for announcing it again. We'll say this, and this is just such a great quote that I just heard today. Somebody asked Volpe, do you think how can you take your game to the next level? What aspect do you need to take your game to the next level? And he said, every aspect. I don't think there's any 23-year-old that's reached his peak or potential. Check, check, and check. It's absolutely correct. We'll see how that happens. All right. Anthony, we gave you the hardest assignments on tonight's show. We've decided to give you we've decided to later on give you a good mark of a mediocre to shitty team. And now let's talk about the thing that is troubling for a team that is currently the best team in baseball in the New York Yankees. Give me a disappointment.
Yeah. You know what? Shout out to Nolan, our buddy Top. I spoke to him the other day, and I literally talked to him on the phone. I was like, these guys stuck me with probably the worst assignment ever. How do you find a flaw team with the best record in baseball? And I was looking at it, I was like, maybe I'll talk about the bullpen. But I was like, well, the bullpen will be all right. I mean, it's missing guys, but I think they'll be all right, for say the least. And then I talked on the Minnesota Twins game I was talking on the phone, and I found my solution. And it's lost in the offensive firepower and the star pitcher who's been on a historic pace the first couple months season. The Yankees' right side infield has been a bit of a disappointment, to say the least. The combination of Anthony Rizzo and Gleyber Torres is definitely underperformed at the plate in the case of they've underperformed at the plate and in the case of Rizzo in the field as well, and that's strikingly frightening when you think about Rizzo being so good as an infielder, despite even when he has offensive struggles. But starting with Gleyber Torres, he's dropped down the lineup. I remember during our spring training show, I talked about him maybe being an option as a leadoff guy, and boy, if that gone out the window almost immediately. When we got his slash line after 60 games, he was coming into tonight's game, 231, 307, 341, 5 home runs, and 19 RBIs, 24.3 strikeout rate, and 9.6 walk rate. But it's the fact that it's not is that. It's the fact that when he makes contact, if it's not home run, it's definitely a weak grounder or a pop up that Billy needs the infield. But I think Anthony Rizzo, and this is a guy I follow from the stands of the Chicago Cubs, that's probably been the most disappointing. When you look at his slash line, 236, 301, 367 home runs, 25 RBIs, 18.3 strikeout rate, and a walk rate of barely just under 6%. He's been a below average hitter, and he struggled defensively as well. But he really has not been the same player since he went through concussion issues since last season. When he did came back, it pretty much happened most of the year. When he came back, he's still not the same player. And it's something to take into consideration because these are two guys who are in contract years, basically. Anthony Rizzo is in the second year of a 2-year, $40 million deal with a team option for a third year. And Gleyber Torres is in the final year of his deal. These are two guys who now you're starting to hear the trade deadline rumors starting to pop up around this time of year. You know, who's going to be buyers, who's going to be sellers. In the case of Anthony Rizzo, he's a guy that is starting to come up in trade rumors as a replacement. I've read a couple online. Paul Goldschmidt being an option for the Yankees if they wanted to go that route. Even the crosstown guy, Pete Alonso, actually came up in a trade rumor that I read online recently. But in the case of Torres as well, I mean, he's going into free agency at the end of the season. And the Yankees were hoping that he can duplicate his 25 home run production from last season. And if he was able to do that with this lineup, obviously it would be a big, more of an added bonus. But yeah, without question, it's been the right side of that infield. And when you look at the Yankees as a whole, they lead the league in scoring runs. It's just an offensive juggernaut, and Judge Soho and even your Carl Stanley's reemergence when he, finally being healthy has got a lot of talk. But the right side of that infield is probably the one that's holding back this lineup from really reaching its full potential. And the next month or so, going into the All-Star break, even afterwards, it's going to be critical for these guys to kind of turn it around. Jay, you rabbi all the Yankee fans in this equation. And I have to ask you, and I'll ask your opinions. If you are watching Anthony Rizzo, I think Torres is held for at least the remainder of the season. But if you're watching Anthony Rizzo, what do you do? Because his value was just as much as a fielder, and even that's been diminished a little bit.
You're gonna need to use him as kind of a locker room leader in a lot of ways. In fact, I actually would go the opposite. I would, if you're going to say one person would not be on this team at the end, past the trade deadline, it would be Torres, just because he is in a position that can be filled by some very good minor leaguers right now in the Yankees farm system. I think Rizzo is on this team, whether it be in a super sub designated hitter pinch hit type role or anything else as the season goes on. I think the one advantage of being a team who has this good of a record is you can allow players to kind of get out of slumps. And eventually, if you ever see injuries in this lineup, by the way, Soto's injury wasn't as bad apparently as first thought. He was taken out for a cautionary measure, and there was a rain delay that happened also. So we'll see what happens with that. But when you also have a chance you won't have some people in this lineup to kind of look back, make Rizzo look a little bit worse in comparison. That may be where Rizzo steps up. So if I were to say that one person would be gone from this team at the trade deadline, it would probably be Torres. I don't think either of them would go on, but I do think if it would one or the other, I think it was Torres, because Rizzo has the leadership and the respect of the locker room that he could be in there for many different ways.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with the Rabbi, Anthony. I mean, look, we know Torres's name has been kicked around, pretty much the minute the trade, deadline rumor mill starts popping up, for whatever reason, the last 3 years now, Torres's name has been on it. Is he the most likely one to go if one of them's going? Yeah, probably, because as Rabbi said, they can backfill second base quite easily. DJ LeMahieu is healthy. You can play him at second base. It's kind of where he started. If he's not playing third, and if he's playing second, Cabrera has shown he can ably fill in at third. They've got Peraza down in the minors, who, if he figures out how to hit, they can bring him up. His glove work has been terrific still. And yeah, the thing about Rizzo is, this is a guy who's a veteran, won a World Series, professional hitter, one of the most respected clubhouse leaders in both Chicago and here. He is, if Judge is the godfather, then the case could be made that Rizzo is his consigliere. And a guy like that, you kind of keep around. And as much, I figure his batting average is going to eventually kind of get up. It's not probably never going to be at where it was at the height of his powers in Chicago, where you could kind of lock him in for 280, 35, 90. But if he gets to the point where by the time it's all said and done, he's a 265, 25, 75 guy with the bat, yeah, you'll take that. To me, the thing that's more concerning than the stick is the leather. And yeah, Anthony, I agree with you. That's where I've seen a definitive loss of a step in terms of his play in the field. Still one of the better first basemen defensively, but I've definitely seen a bit of a dip. So it's a question. A question to me is whether that's just a sign of the beginning of a decline, or it's because for whatever reason he's taken his bat in the field with him, which would be uncharacteristic. But we're all human. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But the fact that they're able to, they're just destroying people right now. There is extended runway for guys like Torres and Rizzo to work their way out of their respective funks at the plate.
Although it is New York baseball, that runway is never long, unfortunately, because the sky is falling for crazy Yankee fans all over there. We're not saying we're not two of them, but we're definitely on the different side of Yankee fans. I'm just saying, and we've talked about this stuff.
We have had this conversation.
We've had this. We've had this conversation a lot. Okay. A lot of reasons to hope, shockingly, about this Yankee ball club. I was actually literally thinking the other day about postseason rotation, which is kind of funny because. But
get ahead of yourself. You are the king of jinxing us. Do not.
I am the king of jinxing. I am the king.
Do not do it here.
I am the king of jinxing. However, the record is so shockingly good that you do have to think about what a shorter Cole rotation, and it looks like, knock on wood for a lot of Yankee fans, it seems like the end of June might be the time that we'll see Garrett Cole back in a rotation. You almost think you would have to go 6 or 7 man rotation to start, which again, the Yankees shockingly do have the luxury of. You've seen a very different Yankee rotation this year. Ironically enough, the worst of the bunch who needs to kind of get himself right is Nestor Cortez, who's having a pretty off season. Clark Schmidt right now is on the DL. Marcus Stroman has been solid, had a rough night tonight, but has been really good. Carlos Rodon has been the second best pitcher in this rotation. Go figure.
Well,
over the last
pitching like
few
we
weeks.
expected him to pitch.
He is pitching because he doesn't have the pressure on him, and he's not the big star of the rotation. And it's not Garrett Cole right now. It's Luis Gil. Yes, Luis Gil, who, by the way, ironically enough, they're playing the Twins this week. He was acquired in 2018 by the Twins for Nick Cave. Yeah, Nick Cave. Who? You got it. Yep. Anyway, in 2018, he came in. He only pitched 7 games through 2021 and 2022. Had to get Tommy John surgery, and didn't even pitch enough in 21 or 22 that he is still currently, technically, by the legal definition of the MLB law, he's a rookie. So that's a very interesting thing to see because he has had one of the most shocking seasons, I think, in New York sports history so far. We're early. He leads the AL with a 1.8 ERA, 4 hits per 9 innings. Anthony, I'm going to piss you off a little bit right here. Do you know who until last night he took over? You know who he just took over the league lead in ERA for right now in Major League Baseball? I learned this from a Mets broadcast last night, if this gives you a hint.
Oh.
Ready? Seth Lugo. Seth Lugo had a 1.6 ERA going into last night and got roughed up by the Royals. It's now over 2. Luis Gil has the league lead now with 1.82 ERA. He was the AL Rookie of the Month, the AL Pitcher of the Month, and along with that, the Yankees also had the AL Batter of the Month in Aaron Judge. Again, we'll get to him in just a moment. In all but 2 of his starts, he has given up 3 hits or fewer, had 14 strikeouts in a game earlier this year against the Chicago White Sox. It's still a major league team. It is the franchise record for strikeouts in a single game by a Yankees rookie. We still count the White Sox as a major league team, even though they are terrible right now.
Do we really, though?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Really?
Yes, we do. 6
All
starts
right.
in the month of May, 6-0, 38.2 innings pitched, 7 ERA. Not 7.00, 0.7 ERA, 44 strikes, 12 walks, allowing 14 hits, just 3 earned runs. Opponents have been batting an OPS of 3.63 against Luis Gil. What is going on here? Now, there is a lot of things that have to be taken into concern. He is a guy who hasn't pitched a lot over the past few years. He's already pitched 63 innings this year, and it probably could be more because of how dominant he's been. So we'll have to see how it goes. But when you have this guy sprout up in your rotation, in a rotation that has thrived as one of the league's best, again, without the reigning Cy Young Award winner in the rotation, may I add, I don't know how you can see anything but reason for hope right now with a lot of this ball club. Now, I know a lot of things are going to happen from now until the end of the season. Injuries are going to happen. Many declines are going to happen. But for what a lot of people have expected from the Yankees earlier this year, and obviously there's always a big moniker for success, they've gotten overperforming almost from everything in a pitching standpoint, and Luis Gil is really the representation of that.
Yeah, I would say this too. I'm looking at the stat now with the Yankees quality starts. They have 30 quality starts this year. Remember last year, it felt like the only time they had a quality start from a starting pitcher when Garrett Cole took the mound. This year, they get it from just contributions all around that rotation. And it's been a big part of why the Yankees are where they are now. I mean, we know they can match the ball with anyone, but when you get in quality starts top to bottom, and Nestor Cortez, who was a former All-Star, is your worst starter, just statistically, I'd say you're in a good place right now. And by the way, if you're the Yankees, how you feel having this kind of record and like Jason Voorhees in your rearview mirror, the Baltimore Orioles won't go away.
One team that they lost 3 of 4, by the way, too, earlier this season. By the way, before I get to you, Jay, Brian Cashman is kind of laughing at himself in the mirror right now about how many people doubted him because he was, by a lot of Yankees fans, one of the most hated men in this team for no reason whatsoever. And for right now, who's laughing now? Jay, I yield the floor.
All right. So do you guys remember, way back in April when so many Yankee fans, several of whom are friends of mine, and I'm sure Rabbi people as well, and maybe even you as well, Anthony, were among all those who are like, oh no, what's wrong with Judge? If he doesn't hit, we won't win. Remember those hand wringers back in April? And to be honest, the New York media fed that narrative as if a slow start was a harbinger of the entire season. Did y'all forget that an MLB season is a marathon, not a sprint? Did y'all forget that other players, Juan Soto being Juan Soto for starters, around Judge did their jobs, keeping the Yankees offense afloat, because you need all nine guys in a batting order for a team to be successful. Not to mention this terrific job of the pitching staff. Did I mention that? Oh, yeah, I think I did at the top of this segment. And continues to do so. The Yankees somehow managed to go 19-12 in the March/April opening month of the season. Somehow managed a positive 39-run differential. Spent 29 of those 31 games in first place in the AL East, despite ending the month with a 7-9 skid, and Judge hitting just 207, 340, 414 slash line with a 754 OPS. A 247 batting average on balls in play, 6 homers, 18 RBI, 12 runs scored, and just 48 total bases and grounding into 10 double plays. But no, all anyone could talk about was how if this was the Aaron Judge of 2024, our season, which still had 5 months to go, was doomed. How was I not freaking out about this? People couldn't understand it. I kept reminding folks, and Rabbi, I'm sure you did too, that this is Aaron freaking Judge, and that he'd eventually start hitting like Aaron freaking Judge. And lo and behold, the calendar flipped to May, and the Yankee captain flipped the switch and then started flipping bats. He hit 361, 479, 918. That was his slash line for the month of May. A 1.397 OPS. A 382 batting average on balls in play. He hit 14 homers, drove in 27, scored 28, had 89 total bases grounded into 1 double play in the month of May. He's 26 extra base hits in the month, are the second most in a month by a Yankee ever, and has only been matched 7 times since World War II. Hat tip to Rabbi for texting me that stat. The Yankees went 21-7 in the month of May and outscored opponents 135-73. Judge now leads the majors in home runs, walks, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, OPS, OPS plus, total bases, and the Yankees have the American League's best record. Sorry, not sorry, but I done told you so.
Oh, by the way, if he had hit at the pace that he did at the home runs, for a full season that he did in the month of May, he would have 82 home runs, by the way, in the season. That's just insane. Monthly barrel percentage of
Done told you so.
Yeah. There's just nothing to say sometimes about one of the great, I don't want to say one of the greatest hitters of our generation, but someone who
sluggers. You can say slugger.
I'll say one of the greatest sluggers of our generation. It's insane. By the way, one wonderful fact about Louis Gill before I moved on. Lowest mark through 19 career starts of batting average against in the live ball era as it's 153. So that's insane. Just a lot of interesting stats this week, especially when you go to the Yankees. Unfortunately, a lot of interesting stats also, Anthony, when you go to the New York Mets. By the way, Anthony is also 1-6 this year at Citi Field. We like to call that out to your attention right now.
Anthony,
what are you doing, dude? What are you doing? You've not done well this year.
Yeah. Hey, look, even the great Bill Parcells had a 3-13 season as a head coach. So it happens. I mean, it's been pretty bad at Citi Field. What the games I go to, because the offense never shows up, but that's besides
that
the
is true.
By the way, shout out to Paige, our colleagues Pedro and Steve Barbanto at Citi Field. Met fans stick together even through the tough times, and it's been a pretty tough year so far.
That was actually also that was to acknowledge the retirement of Darryl Strawberry, a guy who was well overdue to have his number retired.
Oh, absolutely. So. Well, one of the surprises this season has been JD Martinez, and obviously when the Mets signed him to a 1 year.
Can I go into the rest of the introduction too, if I possibly could? Because
let him finish. He's been waiting all week to do it.
I write it. I mean, I should do it. I might as well start doing it now. The New York Mets
I've
are
been
going
Angel
in the opposite.
Hernandez, damn it.
Yeah, that's right. I call it. You called a strike way too early. The New York Mets are going in the opposite direction. A season of lower expectations might have actually been too optimistic. Maybe Anthony was right into interrupting me. Whether it be inconsistent starting pitching, disappointment after disappointment in the lineup, and a hold your nose, not your breath bullpen, the Mets have a lot of what ifs, but they are riding a three game winning streak, 5 out of 7. They're now 27-35, but now they head to London for a home and home series against the best team in baseball. Against the best team in baseball, bruv. The Philadelphia Phillies, actually the second best team in baseball now as of the running of this. They are 16 and a half games back of them in the AL East. Now, Anthony, JD Martinez as the surprise.
By the way, for those of you who are watching this live on Facebook or even on YouTube, what I just did is the equivalent to thinking I just got a walk on ball 3. Okay, that's pretty much if you want to.
That's like a Benioff Bayani. That's like a Benioff Bayani in 2000 handing it over to the crowd when there's still when there's still 1 out left to go in the inning.
Wow.
Okay.
Bayani reference. Wow.
Yeah, that's a throwback. But yeah, JD Martinez has been a bit of a surprise this season, you know, and as I was saying, when the Mets signed him to a 1-year deal, I don't think they expected a whole lot from the 36-year-old veteran, but besides some kind of power. Now, clearly, he's down to the late start, signing late. He also had the back issues that kind of delayed his eventual debut with the Mets. But he's been the most consistent hitter outside Starlin Marte, who deserves a lot of consideration here. He's batting .281. He's on a 10-game hit streak. Going into that home and home series in London. To go with 5 home runs and 15 RBIs. Obviously, the power numbers isn't exactly there compared to what we saw last year. When he hit 271, 33 home runs, and 103 RBIs with the brief stint with the Dodgers. But what he has been able to do is give the Mets some kind of bat in a lineup up and down that has really struggled, that has gone through peaks and valleys. Alonso has gone through his struggles, even though the home run numbers are still there. We know about Francisco Lindor's incredibly slow start. But also, last week he showed a little bit of his veteran savvy and leadership. After the whole Jorge Lopez fiasco, the players only meeting, while it didn't quite pan out well, they split the 4 games against Arizona. They were able to sweep 3 games from the Nationals, kind of show some kind of resemblance. The offense kind of turn around a little bit. To say the least, but he has been the best hitter by far. 320 OPP on base percentage. So Martinez is kind of at this point in his career has given the Mets a little more than what they thought they would get. Obviously, a lot of people thought Mark Vientos would be the DH going into the season full time. Coincidentally, he's now the third baseman for the Mets, and that's been another story in itself. But yeah, when you look at a team that went 9-19 for the month of May, and just what could go, it looks like multi-flaw, what could go wrong did go wrong. JD Martinez is one of the few standouts as far as just being consistent. And by the way, gets an honorable nod for breaking up a potential no-hitter a few weeks ago when the Atlanta Braves were in town with two strikes and 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning. To get his first career home run with the Mets, post Mets home run. It was great timing. But yeah, Martinez is definitely one of the very few bright spots for a Met team that goes into London 8 games under 500, and just trying to dig themselves out of a incredibly deep hole. And they got the NL East leaders in basically across seas for 2 games. So yeah, have fun with that.
Not an easy team at all, although that does seem like, we'll get into the rest of around the MLB later in the year, but that does seem like the Braves season just there, and then something happens for it just to go little bit over the edge because this has been kind of an un-Braves-like season, and the Phillies have played like the World Series caliber team that they have the last 2 years. But this is about the Mets, and Jay, you have the easier question of the two. A lot of disappointments on the team that's 27 and 35. Pick one.
There were so many choices for this angle. I needed Anthony to decide for me. And the Mets losing, this past Sunday for the sixth time when they've led after 8 innings since the 1st of May, the most in the majors, kind of made the choice easy. Anthony threw that stat at me, and that basically made the decision for me. No other team has more than 2 during that time. The Mets have 11. It's actually now 12 blown saves through the first, through the first couple months plus of the season. Only 2 teams have as many, only 7 have more, and their 56% save percentage is 10th from the bottom in all of Major League Baseball. Of the 7 relievers with 4 or more blown saves, Edwin Diaz and Kevin Ginkel of Arizona are the only ones with a positive save percentage. Diaz is 55.6. The Mets figured that the return of Diaz would be cause for celebration. He was the player returning from injury that would be most likely to improve the team. Hell, I even said so on our spring training show. I don't think anyone expected him to blow 4 of his first 9 save opportunities, lose the closer's job before landing on the 15-day injured list. He has been downright awful with a 5.40 ERA, fielding independent pitching of 4.60, a whip of 1.25, a home run rate of 5.9%, and a walk rate of 8.2%. Complete opposite of what we all expected in the epitome of a bullpen that has thrown gasoline on fires instead of putting them out. Arsonists instead of firemen. Through the first 2+ months of the season, the Mets bullpen has posted a 3.91 ERA, that's 17th in Major League Baseball, and a 1.35 whip, that's 24th. Their 14 losses are 25th. Their walks per 9 of 4.7 and walk rate of almost 12 are both 28th. Their batting average of balls put in play at 303 is 27th. Their left on base percentage of 67.6 is 26th. They've allowed a higher percentage of soft contact hits than any team in Major League Baseball by a wide margin, 23.6, a full 3 points worse than the second worst soft contact team. Their win probability added is an NL worst and Major League Baseball second worst, minus 2.2. But it's really been a tale of 2 months for the Mets bullpen. They started the season as you thought they might, but it's been downhill since the calendar flipped to May. And to say that the month of May hasn't been kind to the Mets is an understatement, and the bullpen has not helped. The Penn's ERA went from 2.85 in March, April to 4.88 in May. Their FIP went from 2.94, which was second in all of baseball in March, April, to 4.82, 29th in May. Their batting average on balls in play went from 262, that would have been 6th in March, April, to 338 in May, that's 30th. Their whip, 1.11, number 5 in March, April, ballooned to 1.6, number 29 in May. They had just 3 blown saves in March and April. That was 8th. They blew a Major League worst 7 in the month of May. They allowed 7 home runs in all of March and April. That was 5th best, but a Major League worst 16 in May. The Penn's wins above replacement was an NL best and MLB number 2 at 1.9 in March, April, but an MLB worst minus 1.1 in May. And if you look at the OPS numbers and batting average on balls in play numbers for the Mets' most used relievers, with a minimum of 19 innings pitched through the month of May, the end of May, in high leverage situations, it pretty much tells you all you need to know. Edwin Diaz, 844 OPS, 294 on balls put in play. Adam Ottavino, 832 OPS, 320 batting average on balls in play. Jake Dykman, 1.103 OPS, 357 batting average on balls in play. Reed Garrett has been kind of the best of them, only a 520 OPS, but a 296 batting average on balls in play. George Lopez, yes, I'm including him, even though he's been DFA'd because he was used often enough and contributed to this mess by allowing a 714 OPS and a 304 batting average on balls put in play in high leverage situations. Oh, Dykman was the only reliever to inherit at least 9 runners and allowed less of them to score than the Major League average of 36%. He allowed only 3 of 10 to cross the plate, and even 30%. Lopez allowed 4 of 11, 36%, Major League average. but Drew Smith, Josh Walker, and Reed Garrett were all above 40% on that number. No matter how you slice the statistical pie or how they have epically failed Anthony's eye test, and he's seen this dumpster fire up close and personal too many times already from his seats in Citi Field, the Mets bullpen has been a crushing disappointment so far this season.
I mean, more like an I test more than anything else. The way
okay, well played, Rabbi.
All right, so let's quickly talk about the Mets' reason for hope. Although in this case, this might be there is one, because it's also reason for trade, possibly later in the year for them to get some nice assets, and that's Luis Severino. Shockingly,
I texted you. Did you ever think last year you'd be writing that line in this show?
No, but I think he's a good enough. He has a lot of good stuff, and as long as he was healthy, he does have a good way to kind of get in to getting good starts. He's already made 12 starts this year. He only made 18 in 2013, 19 in 2022. You'd have to go back to the days of 2018 from when he actually made 30-plus starts during a season. He's already pitched 72 innings. He's only 30 innings away from the number that he had in 2022 altogether. And he has a 4-2 record with a 3.25 ERA. In fact, most of his starts can be considered quality starts. He's had 5 quality starts this year, and 2 of his best quality starts. He pitched no-hit ball against the Cubs on April 29th for 7 innings. He pitched no-hit ball for 5 2/3 on May 25th against the Giants. And of course, in true Mets fashion, they lost both of those games. So that's not really a reason for hope. But Luis Severino is actually, this has not been a terrible rotation this year, despite the loss of Kodai Senga. He's not anywhere near coming back currently right now, which is a little bit of a concern for Met fans. Listen, I think Met fans understood this was going to be a struggle this year. And it has been. Although one thing again to see, Luis Severino, another interesting thing about him, he's throwing the sinker 20% of the time this year when he's pitching. The Mets do it 25% of the time. That's the third most in the major leagues. In 2022, his last season where he had some significant stats, he threw the sinker 1% of the time. It does depend on what ballpark that you're in, but he still didn't really throw it a lot. So made adjustments to his game. He strikes out so few players now. His goal is to make sure that the ball is in play and not hit hard. He does pretty well with that. And it'll be very interesting to see. I know the Mets don't really have a lot of options in terms of what they need to do. And a lot of people are thinking, what can I get for Pete Alonso? What can I get for Jeff McNeil? And the answer is nothing. By the way, you really can't get anything right now for Jeff McNeil. It's amazing to see how much he's fallen off of the earth. But it's really just a question of what can make my team better for the future. And that might be a good way to start, because as of right now, the Mets are still considering themselves, at least publicly, in a wild card race, just because
mathematically they're not out of it.
Mathematically, everybody is in it except the Chicago White Sox, which we talked about before earlier on the show. But I think privately, I think the Mets need to know that their goose might be cooked for 2024, and the real question is
getting warmed up.
It's cooked, but the question is, what can they do with the pieces that they have? And Luis Severino is a big piece.
Well, yeah, I agree with you, Rabbi. And I think, the situation that the Mets are in and the decisions that David Stearns makes at the trade deadline, I think is going to be telling, not only for the direction of the team this year, but how those decisions affect 2025, which is when, Cohen said that's when they want to go back to being, that the team that won 101 games, they want to get back to that for 2025. So I don't think they expect it to be at this nadir of a level.
I think when you lower your expectations, you have to accept to be below your expectations.
Rabbi, there's lowered expectations, and then there's
you could be the Marlins. Nobody wants to be the Marlins. So let's be fair here. There's
Yeah.
still room. And
Let Anthony have the last word.
I would say this too. The next month, this month of June is going to be very critical to the Mets. Think about last season. The month of June pretty much broke their season. They finished 10-18 for the month. Lost a lot of close games, and before you know it, they fell out like contention. Look at the National League this year. Outside of the Phillies and the Braves, it's been a race of mediocrity, just across the board. And the Mets, as bad as they are, they're only 3.5 games out of a playoff spot. And that's the underlying current to the suspended playoff, is that you're never really out of it. And that kind of makes whether or not you're buy or sell at the trade deadline a lot more difficult, because you're always one winning streak away from playing yourself back into contention.
Or someone else ahead of you having a bad losing streak.
Yeah, and we saw it with the Cubs last year. Seemed like they were all out of it. Then suddenly they were back in the race to the very end. And like I said, these next few weeks, this is going to be very critical to see what the Mets are. Are they a team that just kind of kid themselves and need to start, thinking about the future? Or just a team that can, make a respectable run, maybe sneak into the playoffs as a wild card, and have something to build on as an organization moving forward, and maybe that is something that can attract free agents and say, okay, this may be a winning situation. But when you look at, like I said, and I'm just looking at the tournament as a fan, there hasn't really been a whole lot that would give Met fans optimism. I mean, even to start the season 0-5, for Christ's sake, and even to the point where the SNY announces like pallbearers every once in a while, giving a eulogy on the Mets season, and then they decided to play 3-4 games and then suddenly they played very well. And like, this is a really tough team to figure out outside of wins and losses. I mean, a week ago, this was a team that literally looked like the worst team in baseball had it not been for the Chicago White Sox existing. And now a week later,
third time we mentioned on this segment, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, this is more times that probably didn't mention the rest of the season, so they might as well get used to it. But now a week later, and you think about this, the 3.5 games out, and they're going to be playing on national television back-to-back days, in London, against a National League East rival who just seems like they're just not going to lose anytime soon. But like I said, it's a long way to go. But this Mets team, they haven't given you any optimism to speak of from a fan. And as a team, as an organization, you're trying to really nitpick at what positives can you get from the first month and a half of the season.
Let me tell you this, though, before to kind of expand on Anthony's point, looking at the standings. As of right now, there are 9 teams in the AL who are over 500. And Houston is not one of those teams, by the way, the team with the most success at 6 consecutive ALCS firsts. There are 4 teams in the NL over 500: Milwaukee, LA, Atlanta, and Philadelphia. Right now, if the playoffs started today, there would be 2 teams under 500. I believe it would be Chicago and San Diego who would make the postseason. Baseball. That's baseball season. For Anthony Strait and Jay Kaplan, I'm Steven Rabinowitz. YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLines on demand. Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines live. Hopefully you are watching right now, so we don't have to tell you again. Don't have to tell you twice. And on X, I know it's Twitter. X is the name of the platform. Jay.
Twitter. Sorry. You're still called.
Can you say the?
Oh, you're gonna let me say it? Okay, sure. Yes. Our Twitter handle is ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to this show when the sun comes up. And we also tend to drop other interesting nuggets related to the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out, give a read, and enjoy.
It is still X. Twitter is still defunct. I know it's the good old days, but whatever.
The URL is still www.twitter.com.
And it takes you to a platform link called X. So I hate Elon Musk as much as you do, but I have to state the facts for people who are looking. Good night from On The Sportslines. We'll see you next.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.